Good morning. This is KHEA Radio. It's just after 9. I got a guest in studio. I'm going to let him introduce himself and then share. There's a lot of information we're going to share about today. How you doing?
Hey, I'm doing good. My name's Justin Gripon. I'm the owner of Gripon Gardens in League City, Texas. And I'm going to talk to you guys about plants and how we're going to go through this spring after a wild, crazy Texas winter. So let's get into it.
Yeah, you mentioned y'all have a greenhouse there. How did y'all fare through this last week?
Man, so we were super lucky. We spent the week leading up to the freeze packing every single thing into our greenhouse, and then we looked at the forecast, and then we reevaluated, and then we restacked and repacked again. So I think we reorganized the greenhouse probably 3 different times, trying to cram more plants into there as it kept getting colder and colder in the forecast. But amazingly, we never lost power at our nursery, and all of the plants that we had kept in our greenhouse came out completely untouched by the freeze. So they look incredible.
Sometimes when I see a weather report or I hear about something coming in the back of my head, it's kind of like, man, do these people really know what they're talking about? Did you have that?
No, 100%, because like half the time I feel like the weather guys are really just professional guessers. Like, yeah, I'm not sure they really know what's going to happen.
And then at what point did you realize, wow, we got to keep stacking, keep putting stuff in the greenhouse?
Yeah. So, I mean, when they first were talking about the weather reports, for this freeze, and they're like, oh, it's going to be like, a chance of snow. I'm like, okay, well, I need to move like my most sensitive tropical things in the greenhouse. That's pretty standard. But then probably like about Wednesday or Thursday, it finally hit me, and I was like, crap, I need to move everything I own into this greenhouse.
How big is the greenhouse?
Oh, it's probably like 80 feet long by maybe like 30 feet wide, 40 feet wide, something like that. It's pretty big. I mean, it's been on our property since probably the mid 80s or so. It's been, we re-roofed it back about 3 years ago. But yeah, it does great. I mean, we were able to maintain, when it was like 12 degrees outside, we were able to hold it at about 40 degrees in our greenhouse, even with that big of a drop outside, as long as I've been around the industry, this is the coldest that we've ever had to protect against at our property.
Mm-hmm. Can you tell me a little bit about Gripon Gardens? How long has it been there?
Yeah, so Gripon Gardens is a new iteration of our business. So it started out with my grandfather, Lynn Gripon, who opened up Lynn's Landscaping back in 1951, which just originally started out as kind of like more of a lawn maintenance style business, and then that morphed into, a full landscape design program, and then eventually we had a garden center there, and then back in 2018, we rebranded it as Gripon Gardens for just the garden center portion, and then I took over all that. So that's Gripon Gardens is my baby. We do a lot of wholesale and retail sales through there, it's really a lot of fun because I get to work with so many incredible people, and one of the things that I find really fortunate about the process that we go through is that I get to work with tons of little mom and pop growing operations all across Texas and Louisiana, and they are some of the just most down to earth, nicest people you will ever meet. I just love it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I haven't been yet, and I know last time that you came in, you were like, "Come out," and I need to come out. Okay, for someone like me, how would you describe it? I haven't been, so what is it like whenever you get there? Because I've heard it's beautiful.
Yeah, so this is actually a kind of a difficult thing for me to describe because I've grown up in and around this property my whole life. So for me, it doesn't seem all that special. It seems very normal for me. So I have to rely on what new customers come in and what they see, because my experience walking in there is obviously very jaded experience because I have preconceived notions of everything. But it's, we're right in the middle of all of the suburban sprawl of the Clear Lake League City area. All right. But when you come into our nursery, things get quiet. You don't really hear the hum and the hustle and bustle of the town. We're surrounded by these gorgeous oak trees in this big orchard. and you can hear the birds chirping, and you can hear the water fountains just flowing, and it's like stepping into a little paradise. I mean, it is so relaxing. I mean, during the springtime when everything's in bloom, people will just come out and sit and read a book on our patio and look out and listen to the birds chirping, and it's really wonderful.
Mm-hmm. You had mentioned y'all been there for how long? Since 1951?
1951 is when my grandfather opened it, yeah.
Right in League City the entire time?
Yeah, the whole time, same location.
There's been a lot that's happened in League City since 1951.
Well, I mean, back then, where we're at now was considered like the boondocks of the area, right? Like we were out in the country. League City was over on Main Street and by the railroad tracks, and that was League City. Now League City is everywhere and all around us. So,
and it's still growing.
And it is still growing. It's crazy.
I was talking to Dewan at the chamber yesterday, and he was just mentioning how we're only like halfway built out, 50% built out. I was like, we need to start to build up. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know where we can go, but I guess there's still a lot of opportunity for business owners and people here in League City.
Oh, the opportunity in our area is so tremendous. I mean, it's, and there's going to be so much more new construction taking place. And, the great thing about all this new construction is that, we're talking about, new homes and new businesses that are built up to bigger, stronger, and impressive codes. So, hurricane mitigation is not going to be as, problem because all these new homes are built to these new higher standards, and it's just everything gets better and better.
Okay, since the freeze, it's hard, and a lot of people are still recovering, fixing their pipes. Have you had people reach out to you and ask, "What do I do now? Everything looks dead."
Yeah, so we've been flooded. This is like the number one question that we keep getting asked is, what do we do now, right? What's the next step? And people are going to find themselves kind of in two different camps. Either you're going to be in the camp where you're like, okay, I want to try and save my plants, or you're like, all right, we're cutting our losses, trying to replant. And either way you want to look at that, we've got you covered. If you are trying to save what you've got and you think that there's a chance for life in these plants, which some of them will, but a lot of them are probably going to be toast. The best thing you can do is go ahead and start pruning them back. And we should know in roughly about 30-ish days whether or not something's going to survive. So if you don't see any signs of life in about 30 days, it's probably done.
It's done.
Yeah, there's not a lot of hope at that point. And I mean, there's things that we can do to put on them to try to breathe fresh life in them. So we carry a line of organics at our garden center called MicroLife. I've spoken to the guys over there who actually make the products, like all the science goes into it. And what they're telling us, and this is everything that I have read and would agree with too, is to put a product called Ocean Harvest on all of your plants that you're trying to breathe fresh life into. It's another product that would actually help with that is also called Soil and Plant Energy. All these are available at our nursery, but what we're trying to do is we're trying to get all of the microbial life in the soil back active again. We're trying to get fluids back into the plants to try and work around the damage. And there's going to be, I mean, no matter how you cut it, there's damage that's been done, and we're fighting an uphill battle here. But if you're wanting to save the plants, you're going to have to try and fight it.
Okay, so I have a couple questions. Some of my plants have some green in them, and some just look like they're all brown.
Yeah.
Does that mean anything, or is it just on the surface?
No, so what you're going to do is, even those ones that are showing a little bit of green in them, you're going to want to trim those back to the green point. So let's say it's a wooded plant, right? So you've got nice wood stems. Cut back all of the obviously dead bits until you start to see a little bit of green inside of the wood itself. And then from that point, you have a healthy, alive plant, and it should start to reproduce growth from that cut.
Okay, here's another question that I have. My wife at our house covered up some of the plants. We kind of did trash bags and just did the best we could, brought some in. What's the best thing to do if this ever happens again in the future? Just bring them in. Some of the plants that were covered, they look like they died anyways.
Yeah, so normally frost protection covering plants works down here because we don't, usually if we're going to freeze and the weathermen's are, like, oh, it's going to snow, it's going to freeze. They're like, really, it only means that we're going to be, at the freezing point for a couple of hours because we don't really get all that cold here. But this cold snap we had was an absolute freak of a, event. And even if you covered it, things weren't happy. I mean, normal frost protection is not really designed to hold back this level of cold. This is frost protection coverings. It can keep, bits of ice off the top of the plants. It can keep, temperatures that are really above the 20s, like that 29 to 32 degree range. Frost protection covering will save your plants 100%. Once you get into the lower 20s and especially into the teens, all bets are off.
Yeah, we were like hanging out at 18 degrees.
Yeah.
Then, yeah, that's not going to work. So, okay, the other thought. So this is something my wife said, maybe we should have done this. Like whenever there was like ice or snow or whatever it was built up, it was kind of just like hanging out on the plants. Should we have removed it around from there? Or is it too much water and moisture? Like as it melted, maybe it drowned some of the plants that aren't designed? Because we had like some cactus and some other things.
So one of the kind of the cool things about how ice and snow can work is this is super contrary to like how you think about ice and snow because like it's cold, right? Mm-hmm. But it can actually work as an insulator for your plants. So if we get a dusting of ice or snow at the beginning of a hard freeze like this, it can actually help to prevent further damage from the plummeting cold at night, because once you get that layer of ice built up on all the exterior of the plant, it prevents the temperature within that core of the ice from getting down to those temperatures of like 12 degrees, because your ice layer on the plant is stuck at that freezing point and will insulate the interior away from the sub, really super cold temperatures outside.
Is it kind of like an igloo?
Yeah.
I've always wondered about that. I'm like,
it's just like an igloo. It's exactly like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's crazy, right? Because you don't think that ice can be warm, but it can be.
Mm-hmm. Man, yeah, we don't really prepare for stuff like that. And just, this is good information to get out right now. Hopefully it doesn't happen again. And if it does, it's just like that light, oh, it's 32 degrees, we got snow, and then like we move on because we were not prepared.
Well, and it's weird because, we're not that we're in like uncharted territory, but we sort of are, because this doesn't happen very often. I mean, it was 30 years ago the last time that we had a hard freeze, something like this. And so most people are not used to or understand how their plants are going to react. A lot of plants show their damage and their hurt immediately. But some plants don't. Some plants kind of play possum with our hearts on whether or not they're actually going to die or not. And one of those that very often will play possum with that is queen palms. So, queen palms are something that is just planted all over our area because we like to brand ourselves as like this subtropical region where, we can have that beach lifestyle and our palm trees in our backyard. But, every 30 years, Mother Nature likes to remind us that we're a bit further north than we think we are.
Yeah. What are some good plants that are for our area?
Yeah. So one of the plants that have done extremely well here is junipers. All of your junipers have weathered this freeze like nothing even happened. So, it's not a very commonly used plant, but I'm thinking that its popularity is going to start to go up now that we've had this freeze, and it's going to remind people of the things that don't do as well here.
Okay, I'm Googling juniper plant right now.
Yeah, so juniper is a really cool plant because it comes in a lot of different varieties. You can get junipers that look more like a tree, and then there's some junipers that stay really small and tight to the ground.
Okay, so this one, the second thing that pops up says like a juniper bonsai, and I think of like the Karate Kid. Is it kind of like in that family, I guess?
So bonsai is more of a technique of growing than anything else. Believe it or not, you can bonsai most varieties of plants. It's some plants have been genetically made to grow super small like that, but it's all about having super tight controls over the growing conditions and the amount of nutrients provided to the plant. But you can bonsai most things.
Okay, so in my backyard, whenever we first moved into our house, I went to just the store and I was into like, oh, I want to plant a little tree.
Yeah.
And so I found one that looked like a little Christmas tree, and I can't remember what it's called, but I thought it was going to get big, but it just like grew about to the area of the fence, but it looks just like a little Christmas tree, and that thing is thriving. Like I went out there and I looked at it after the cold and everything, and my wife was like, well, yeah, it's like a little Christmas tree. So it
may be a type of juniper. There's a lot of little junipers like that will grow in that kind of pyramidal style Christmas tree look to them, and they do really good at another one that's sort of like that would be like your Arizona cypress. Maybe they do really good, and they have also that kind of conical shape like a Christmas tree.
Yeah, for Christmas I did put little
ornaments
and like a little thing around it, and there was like actually a star on top, and then it was fun.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about irrigation. I feel like that's in your wheelhouse, right?
It is, yeah. So I'm actually a licensed irrigator and a state backflow inspector. So our phone was ringing off the hook both before and after the freeze event. Beforehand we were trying to tell everybody how to prepare for this freeze and not end up with broken irrigation pipes, which even if you did everything right, unfortunately, with the level of freezing that we got to, it still could have blown. We had a couple of customers that still had busted pipes, and the biggest thing is if you have a contractor coming out to do an irrigation system, is making sure that they install you a shutoff valve for the irrigation system in the ground, because we found that as we were going out to do so many repairs, that a lot of people who had these irrigation systems had their master shutoff valve installed in the piping that was above ground, and those master shutoff valves were just exploding. But all of our customers who had master valves installed in the ground kept insulation around that valve, and they had no problems.
So how would you get to the shutoff if it's in the ground?
So normally there's an access box that's installed around it, so that way you can get your hand in there and close that valve off. And that's what we did. So the name of the game with prevention of freeze is to depressurize and remove water. So and most people everybody who has a irrigation system is going to have a backflow prevention device. The most common one is called a pressure vacuum breaker. It's the classical has a little bell on top of it. Two pipes coming up out of the ground make a big U shape above, and the insides of that are all plastic. You've got that beautiful brass and copper housing, but the internals are all plastic, and they're designed to fail in a controlled method on the inside, so that way when it freezes, it's trying not to break all of the metal parts, and instead, if it's going to fail, it's supposed to fail where the plastic bits are, because those are easier to replace and a lot less costly. But what you want to do is simply remove the water. If there's no water, we don't have to consider or worry about the expansive damage that ice can produce.
So not last year, but the year before, my sprinkler system in my house had that leak. I took the little screwdriver out there. I watched the YouTube video and was like, turn it this way, release pressure, do this. And it still happened. But what I didn't do was I didn't put wrap anything on it. And so last year I did that and I was fine on the one day. Maybe we got cold or whatever it was. And so this year I haven't turned anything back on, but I went out there, I watched the video, turned the screwdriver halfway, let the water go, release the pressure, do all this stuff. But then I wrapped it up and I put a trash bag on top. And I'm hoping that did the trick. But
if there's any amount of prevention that you can do, it's helpful. Any time you can wrap a pipe up, it's going to help you in the long run. But even this freeze was just crazy, because even if you did everything right, we had people with blown pipes. And they did nothing wrong. They did everything that they could have done, and they drew the short straw.
I've heard that a lot. It's there's nothing else that I could have done to prevent what happened, because at some point it's just so cold, or the way it's designed, or you can't get to it, something's just going to happen. Yeah.
Now I will say the people who had their shutoff valves installed in the ground, most of those people did not have any problems, because the ground is a fantastic insulator. Temperature of our ground here usually stays in about the 60 degree range. It doesn't really move too far out of that.
Yeah.
Even when we get to those super cold temperatures, the ground is going to offer some warmth.
So if you have a busted pipe, is it possible to relocate the shutoff the valve into the ground?
Yeah, absolutely. So what you have to do, though, is you have to go and shut off the master meter by the street for your house, turn that water off, and then you're just going to need to dig down where the pipes are at for your backflow preventer, dig a couple feet down in, and maybe a foot or so away from where you were, and install that master valve there, and then repipe back to the same direction it was already before. So that way now you're protected.
It makes sense. Like if you have a busted pipe and it's like, well, someone's coming out here,
yeah,
might as well try and fix this, in the future. And it's exciting because now we're even allowed to drink the water again.
I know.
So that's a plus, isn't it?
We were lucky at my house because we're in Texas City. We got our drinking clearance back pretty quickly.
Yeah, it was like days before Leak City and Galveston. It was the first one that I saw, at least.
Yeah, it was crazy. It's weird how dependent some of our systems are on power. Like I thought more things had like generator backups that were like critical infrastructure things, like water, for example. But I guess there's going to be a lot of rethinking of how prepared we really are, I think, after this.
Oh, for sure. And with the rolling blackouts, here's the craziest thing. Out of all the cities in the county, they shut off the sewer sanitation for the city of Lamarck. Somebody's looking at the power grid like, okay, what do we need? What do we not need? Okay, what's here? Yeah, the water plant. Nah, we don't need that. Let's shut it off. But that happened. And so they were, they had a generator there, and it's like, okay, what happens when the generator, runs out of the gas or whatever it is? And so we need another backup. So they made it happen, and thankfully there wasn't any issues. But I see all these cities out right now, and we actually filmed a little bit of some of it yesterday. They're out there fixing the pipes and everything else now that, okay, the water's running, but there's a lot of pressure that gets on these pipes.
Oh, yeah.
There's a lot of repairs.
It's, well, and it's, there's a lot of these pipes where, even though they may not have broken during that freeze initially, the ice inside of them when they did freeze, it put so much pressure on the pipes that some of these pipes have been made brittle. And when the water pressure comes back from the city, that's when they're getting slammed and they're bursting, just because the pipe becomes so brittle from the ice pressure on it that when that 60 to 70 pounds of city water pressure comes in there, just burst. Can't handle it.
Wow. This is KHEA Radio 99.5 FM. I'm talking to Justin Gripon with Gripon Gardens at Lynn's. Justin, what's your vision, not even just for this year, but for Gripon Gardens in the future? What's your hope?
So, ultimately what we're trying to do is help as many people as we can with their gardening and landscaping needs. A lot of people come in and they really are kind of unsure of what they want to do, so we help guide them through how we can make their yard look beautiful and what kind of plants go with what. There's a lot of personal opinion in what you like versus what I like, but we really try to guide people into making something that they can be happy to look at every morning and every night when they're outside in their garden area, and as well as introducing people to organics. A lot of people, they're not that they're trying to do something wrong in their yard, it's just they don't know what options are available. And once we explain to people how the natural systems that Mother Nature has put in place for all these plants to function on, they work, and how using a organic product helps to strengthen those natural systems and not replace them, it's really a no-brainer. We don't have to convince people and drag them to come buy products. We just explain to them how they're helping and not hurting their plants in the long run.
I think people hear the word organic and they think it costs more and it doesn't work as good.
Yeah, so we fight, literally that's one of the things that we fight the most. And people are like, oh, I can't afford this, like organics. Like, no, trust me, like we've done the research on it. Like when you're using these organics, it ultimately actually saves you so much money because the amount of water that you need to supply to, let's just use grass, for example, because everybody's got grassy yards, right? The amount of water that you need to supply to your grass during a summertime heat is significantly decreased if you've been using organics, because your grass has these natural systems that Mother Nature's got in place using the microbes, the soil biology to support the plant. And the roots have driven so much deeper in the ground, and they're able to tap into water that if you had shallow roots, just wouldn't. And that's why you'd have to constantly supply them with water. And using organics does not leave your plants open to as many invasive pests and funguses that can come in there and wreak havoc on your yard. So it ultimately saves you a significantly more money by using organics than versus using chemical products.
Whenever you talk about organics, you're talking about like products like MicroLife?
Yeah, products just like MicroLife. So we struck like kind of like the geographical lottery with MicroLife, because MicroLife was born and created right in the center of Houston. A guy named Mike Sarant, he dreamed up MicroLife. He actually had a background selling chemical fertilizers when he was young, and as he became more and more educated on how fertilizing works, the more he started to become aware of some of the unintended consequences that were being created by using chemicals. And so he was really seeking to find an alternative, and what is something we can do that's not going to have all these terrible side effects. And he had to create it. It didn't exist. So he made MicroLife. It's his own formula. They now have an entire line of products, and it's really grown into this huge company. But we're able to have very low cost on our products because the manufacturing hub is right here in Houston. You can have that MicroLife delivered all over the U.S. And for us, it's kind of in our backyard.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's cool. Okay, so here's another thought that I had. Whenever you were talking about, the vision and the hope for the future, and, just being able to outfit people and kind of bring their vision to life, I guess, as well.
Right.
But whenever you talk to someone or they're looking for landscaping and they're trying to see what works for them, do you have to get to almost know them a little bit to see, like, are you going to need a lot of upkeep? Are you going to actually keep up with it? Is this something that you want to refresh every month? Is it something you want, hey, I'm going to leave it there and let it go? Or is there plants that kind of go with people's personality as well?
100%. So, we not that I'm trying to like stereotype or like judge people when they come in, but when people come into the garden center and we start to get a feel for what they're I'm definitely trying to kind of I don't know, lack of a better way to describe this, but like size them up to figure out what is going to be the best fit for you. What's that the Texas mattress maker guy, how his little commercial, he's like, I want the best mattress for you, right?
Yeah
Like, I'm interested in you. It's kind of like that, but for plants. I really do want to find what is going to be the best plant match for what your needs are. Do you want something that's super drought tolerant? You don't have to worry about it. We've got some really cool plants that can fit your need. You can just throw them out there and forget you ever put plants in, and they'll just go.
Mm-hmm.
And on the spectrum of that, we've got some plants that you're going to have to baby them a little bit. You're going to need to make sure you're taking care of their needs and looking at them and figuring out what they need. So we've got all ends of the spectrum, and we do our best to try to match those with the customer.
Okay, here's a question. This is from my friend Cody Garza. He's with Premier Martial Arts. Shout out to PMA in League City, Pearland, and in Dickinson, Texas. He was asking if we talked about cutting trees back that frozen, and we talked about plants. How does that go for trees? Is it about the same?
So, it depends on what kind of tree it is, because a lot of trees made it through this freeze with no problems. But if your tree is showing signs of freeze damage, the same rule is going to apply. You want to cut back to where you can see the green coming out in the wooded part of the tree. So once you get back to the point where you can see the green, it's safe to stop cutting. But now we weren't telling people to cut back immediately, because we were still within the threat of a freeze. And as long as there is a threat of a freeze coming up back around, you actually want to keep all that deadened wood there and not, because it works as an insulator for the healthy wood that's below it.
Okay, so I'm looking at the weather now, and it looks like, well, I mean, we're going to be, the lowest that we're going to be is like 52 in the next week. And I think we only have like a couple more weeks before like official spring.
Yeah.
Are we through?
So if you look at like the historical stuff in it, like the Old Farmer's Almanac, and everybody who tries to like tell us, when's your last freeze? So statistically speaking, the last freeze that we're supposed to have for our area is right around Valentine's Day, which coincidentally enough was the biggest freeze of the year for us. So, but yeah, typically Valentine's Day is when everybody will tell you, okay, from that point forward, it's safe to start pruning things back, getting ready for that spring flush out of growth, because the threat of freezing has been mitigated by that point usually.
Okay, so just to reiterate, cutting back plants, trees, you want to cut to the green.
Cut to the green.
And then in about 30 days, we should know if the plant is going to make it, the tree is going to make it, or if there's life.
Yeah. Now, yes, and the one thing I will say that is an obvious exception to this rule is mush. So when I drive around, it's like when you buy a new vehicle, right? You buy a blue truck, right? And then for the next like 2 months, all you see is blue trucks on the road, because you're like, your eyes have been honed to see that. So my eyes are honed for plants. And so every time I drive around, I am looking at people's plants. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is just so sad. And a lot of plants have literally just turned to mush. And because their cells inside the plant froze, and when they thaw, they just disintegrate. If you've got a plant like that, it's done. Like there's no recovery from mush.
Yeah. I know. I was talking to, it was AJ with Hippie Fertilizing, and like I was like, I got some that are just like full brown. There's no green. Yeah. He's like, yeah, if that's the case,
it's done.
Just chop it.
Yeah.
Chop it off, kind of turn up the soil. And he said, well, it's a foxtail fern, I think is what it's called. And he was like, well, those are kind of resilient. He said, maybe leave it down there. You never know. It could come back.
Yeah. So foxtail ferns are interesting little plants, because all of their foliage, all the green, that's all dead. 100%. It's gone.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. But, foxtail ferns will sometimes come back from nothing but root. So that's one of the ones where if you're on the fence about whether or not to try and save it, that's one that I would consider trying to save. Cut it back to there's just nothing, all the way down to the root. Pour some of our organics on there. Make sure you keep it hydrated, and you may have a healthy plant produced back in 30-ish days.
Really?
And just you're not going to see a lot in 30 days, but if you see some signs of growth, if you see it trying, you've got a fighting chance.
And then in 30 days, if you don't see anything, maybe next year, or is it's gone?
No, if you don't see any signs of life in 30 days, it's probably done.
Yeah, my trees match like the mulch and dirt, like the foxtail fir and some of them. I was like, man, at least it matches, because we had just had some work done like literally right before the freeze, kind of like, oh, let's pick the the weeds and turn up the mulch, maybe add some more and dirt and all this stuff. It looked great for about a week.
Yeah.
And it all froze.
Yeah, and it's it's going to be a crazy year for our industry, because on one spectrum, we're going to have some of the highest demand for plants that we've experienced in a very long time. But then on the other side of that, where the plants come from, all these mom and pop farms all over the Texas and Louisiana have suffered significant losses. I had farmers that we were reaching out to, and they were telling me that they lost like half of their greenhouses, just collapsed under the weight of the snow. So, it's going to be a tough year to acquire plant material and be able to get it to people.
So how does it work? Do you grow some of those at the greenhouse from seeds, and other ones you bring in and then kind of keep them there? Or how does that work at Gripon Gardens?
Yeah. So for our situation, our greenhouse is our insurance policy, right? So it doesn't really get a whole lot of use until the wintertime when it earns its keep. You only need it to be used one time for it to matter. But no, so we bring in all of our material from little mom and pop farms throughout Texas and Louisiana. And it's really a wonderful setup. We're able to support small mom and pop businesses like ourselves and be able to bring those products to our clients. And one of the really kind of unique things about our particular setup is that we don't rely on a third party to transport our material to us from the farms. We actually go out. I will hand pick all of our material from the farms and make sure that everything reaches my level of approval before it comes to our property, and we then are able to get it to our customers at the end of the day.
So out in Santa Fe, there's Moondog Farms, and my friend Danny works there, and one of the city council women, Casey, she and her husband, they run that. But they have a greenhouse, and I saw Danny posted on Facebook saying, like, hey, I'm doing these flower deliveries for Valentine's Day, and I don't know. So I got one. I got one for my wife, and they were beautiful. And he was like, yeah, I just cut them this morning. I was like, y'all grow these there? He was like, yeah, we have a greenhouse.
Yep.
Because I was wondering how that stuff works. But
yeah, I mean,
cool.
Greenhouses are fantastic. A lot of the farms that we work with use these greenhouses as a way to get a head start on the season, because it's when everybody gets excited about, oh, it's warm outside, it's time to get those plants. Well, if you're wanting to plant then, that means the farmers had to have started those plants months in advance, and they had to have started them in greenhouses to get them ready for when it actually is warm and everybody gets that itch to go do the planting.
Okay, here's a comment that I'm going to read. This is from Amber Murphy. She's with Butler's Courtyard in League City, and I'm going to show the picture if you're watching on social media, and then I'll show it to you, Justin, as well. So she said, Amber said, hey, I sent you a pic. It's her orange tree. It's a miracle tree, and we love it. So we're super sad about it. We were even planning to move it to our new house with us. We love it too. And so I think she said that's her orange tree. So does it look like there's any hope for that? You just got to cut it back and wait, huh?
Yeah. So I'm looking at this here. I do see some green on the lower portions. What I would do is immediately start cutting on the obviously dead areas, because one of the things that you want is going to help as part of that pruning process is when you prune plants, trees back, it allows for that plant to focus more energy into the healthy areas rather than putting energy into areas that are a waste of its time. But we have to. So if we cut off the dead, then your plant can push more energy into the areas that are healthy, and you're going to get quicker, faster growth out of those areas.
Mm-hmm. Amber, I'm just wondering why I've never had any oranges from your orange tree.
Yeah.
I love Amber, and I've seen her maybe a million times in the past year, and I haven't had one orange. Have you had an orange?
I have not had one of hers oranges. Yeah, I mean, I feel completely snubbed over here.
Well, hopefully we could save the tree and maybe enjoy an orange.
Absolutely. Well, and Amber, if you're still listening, it's going to be an uphill battle for that tree. I would, if you've got the time, please come by the nursery. We can get you set up with a regimen of organics to put on there, because you definitely want to have everything working for your plant right now in a time of stress like this. All of our plants, if they're damaged and there's a chance of them making it, they're under a tremendous amount of stress, and we need to do everything we can to mitigate that so that they actually have a chance at life again.
Mm-hmm. Is there anything else you'd like to share? Just remind people one more time, I guess, where y'all are at and anything else they need to know.
Yeah, so this is actually one of the more challenging things about our location is that we're kind of hidden, which is wonderful because it allows us to have kind of this secluded oasis away from things, but people don't always know exactly where we're at. So most time the easiest way to find us is to type us in on Google Maps, and she'll take you right to us. But if you'd like to kind of know an area where we're at, we are off of Highway 96 in League City, in an area that used to be called Link Road before 96 existed. We are between I-45 and Highway 3 off of Highway 96. So if you're coming from I-45, you're going to travel eastbound towards KHEA down 96. You're going to go past the big ACU Bank of Texas, and then we'll be on the 2nd Street past the bank, turning right onto Pecan Orchard Road. Once you go down Pecan Orchard Road, you could not miss us if you wanted to. We're large, big, and bold down there.
Have you ever been in that ACU?
I have. Actually, we do the Christmas lights on that building every year.
Okay. It's nice.
It is beautiful.
It is very big.
Like, you walk in there and you're like, this is a bank? Like,
yeah.
This is gorgeous.
Yeah. We did some videos for him and I had the opportunity to go film in there. And I was like, this is awesome. And then we actually did another video in Lamarck, at the Lamarck location too, like right before everything shut down. And I was like, I was like, why? How many rooms are in here? What's going on? This is massive. I felt like I didn't dress up enough for this.
Yeah, we actually they have a community conference room behind the front entrance area, and we use it a few times a year for our Lions Club meeting. Well, we're using it back when we were actually able to have in-person meetings, but we would have our Lions Club meetings in there. Really, they do a lot of stuff with the community and try to open themselves up for different activities.
So speaking of the Lions Club, I did see. I know Melaine, she used to be with League City Lions, and now she's doing another one, but I saw y'all working together to try and do some water distribution and just get some stuff out.
Yeah, I know her, and they were working on the district regional level. So, we've got our local little Lions Club chapters, and then we're part of a district that encompasses a larger area. And I know they were trying to work on a district level to acquire some water and be able to distribute it. But I think we're having some trouble with the acquisition part of that because water has become, super scarce to get. And I think even the state was having to bring water in from out of state on airplanes just to get into the areas that need it.
That's crazy. Craziness.
Crazy, right?
Actually, which reminds me, because there's the Lamarck Lions as well, and Mr. Gillespie at ACU of Texas, he's been serving as the president, I think, he's at least been a part of the Lions since the 80s.
Yeah,
Russ Gillespie, and so we filmed him. He was part of the ACU thing that we did. So hopefully some live events can come back. I know the League City did a huge thing, every year. Has there been any word on anything with that?
So you're talking about the League City Music Festival, yeah. So the League City Music Festival has been in the Lions Club's portfolio of things that we do for, good Lord, I guess. 60-something years now. Originally started off as the Village Fair in League City and then morphed into the League City Music Festival. But we've had to, we postponed the festival for 2020. We attempted to reschedule it for the September kind of time period. And then as we approached closer to that, we ended up having to postpone that. And then we're like, okay, well, let's postpone it to our normal time in 2021, which would be May. And then as, we kind of got into like the December-ish type of time frame, we're looking, forecasting, like, nothing's really changing as far as our ability to have people.
Yeah.
So we're like, we're going to go ahead and postpone the 2021 festival to try and do for September. And, it's ultimately when we're trying to make the decision as a Lions Club to either proceed with the festival or postpone it, there's one piece of the puzzle that is critical, and that is there a possibility that somebody could come to our festival, get sick, and die? As long as that's a possibility, I don't think I could stomach it. Like, I couldn't sleep at night if I knew that we chose to have the festival to make a buck for, the philanthropic things that we do in the community, and as a sacrifice to that, somebody's going to lose their life because they came in contact with COVID. And until we can prevent that from happening, I'm not sure that we'll be able to stomach it. So it's a very delicate balancing act. You want to bring people together, and we want to have our fundraiser because this is our primary means of raising money for all the things that we do in the community. So it's painful to not have it, but it's more painful to have it and somebody get hurt.
That, you know what? You said that perfectly. Yeah. And I agree with you.
Yeah.
Awesome. So thank you so much for taking the time to join today, and make sure you go check out Gripon Gardens at Lynn's in League City. And then you can follow the League City Music Festival and Barbecue Cook-Off. Hopefully there's some updates. I've seen trends of the numbers going down. Even in you'll see like these hot spots, like Tampa Bay wins the Super Bowl. They're out having, a party
in the
numbers
streets. Are going up.
Yeah, so like you see it happen in other places. So hopefully we'll see a trend down, and we'll
I
continue
hope
to
so,
do stuff. Yeah,
because I miss the music festival. It's very strange not having that. We've been doing it. I grew up doing it as a kid, so it's weird.
and hopefully we'll get that back. Again, thank you for joining us today.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
It's KHEA Radio 99.5 FM. All right, social media, again, feel free to share this out. If you have any questions for Gripon Gardens, for Justin, about anything, feel free to ask in the comments and reach out to them. We'll get those